Hey, welcome to Sports Insider here on cleveland.com. I'm your host, Chris Fedor, flying solo on this Thursday. No Bud Shaw, no Dan Lobby, but we've got plenty to get into. The Browns on a bye week, but making big news. Johnny Manziel, the starting quarterback for the rest of the season. We'll talk to our Browns beat reporter Mary Kay Cabot about that. Ohio State taking on Michigan State on Saturday. Then they're going to finish the regular season against Michigan. We'll talk to our Ohio State beat reporter Doug Lesmerises about that. But first, Cavs playing tonight. It's a national TV game. Milwaukee Bucks in town. Second meeting between the two teams in the last week or so. And joining us to talk about that game and everything that's going on with the Cavs riding a two-game losing skid, it's our Cavs beat reporter, Chris Haynes. What's up, bud?
Fedor, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me, man. You could have picked anybody for this show, and you picked me. So I very much appreciate it.
You're always first, Chris. There's no question about that. So with the Cavs riding this two-game losing skid, they're still 8-3 on the season. So I'm guessing it's too early to classify something as being a worry for you. But what have you seen in the last couple of games, or in the first 11 games, we should say, that might be a little bit alarming to you when it comes to the Cavs, Chris?
Well, the alarming thing is the fact that they have been playing down to a level of competition pretty much the entire season. There has been a couple of games where there's been an exception. The game in Memphis sticks out to me right now. But, you know, they've been able to get away with victories surely on talent, based on they have the best players on the court on most nights. And I think that these last couple of games have shown that, hey, if you continue to play with fire in that manner of going out there playing with complacency, a lack of effort, that you can't get burned. And Detroit, Milwaukee proved that the Cavs aren't invincible, even in the inferior Eastern Conference. So, and I think that's why LeBron and David Blatt has been getting on this team so much over the last couple of days, questioning their toughness, questioning how hungry they are. So we'll see how the team as a whole responds.
What did you make, Chris, of the other night in Detroit, LeBron James singling out Golden State and kind of comparing the Cavs to the Warriors?
Because that's the ultimate team. And it looks like Golden State has separated themselves from the pack, not just the pack of the Western Conference, but the pack of the league. And if the Cavs are to get to the finals, that's that team. And that's also that team that beat them in the finals this past, in June. So that's the measuring stick. That's why Golden State was pointed out, for multiple reasons. And, the Cavaliers probably within that locker room are thinking, hey, they're headed that way anyway. That's what everybody's writing. That's what we're all saying. The Eastern Conference is a joke. There's nobody in that conference that can compete with them. They're going to slide all the way down to the finals with no problem. And LeBron, and that might be true. But once they slide all the way to the finals, then what? Because coming up short again in the finals, that's not considered a good season anymore. Last year it was because LeBron's message was patience, like first 3, 4, and 5 months. Patience. Then they got to it. Now it's like, okay, we're here now. Now you're expected to win. The ante is up. So I think that's why he singled out Golden State.
If you go back to those comments that LeBron made, I was trying to think about this the other day. There had to be a specific player that he was targeting with those comments, and that's kind of how he has operated in the past, and he hasn't revealed the person's name, but you can kind of read between the lines and say, okay, I know who he's talking about there. When he made those comments against Milwaukee and then against Detroit, who do you think he was referencing when he was talking about, hey, we lost in the finals. We didn't win in the finals. We lost in the finals, and they're playing with more effort than us. Was there a particular player that you think he was targeting with that?
I don't know if there's a particular player. I will say this. Let me break out a story from that Milwaukee game. So LeBron, he says what he says after Milwaukee, that we're not who we think we are and all that. He was mad. He was upset. So I go over and talk to him and just chat. And he's telling me, see, man, we think we're something that we're not, man. We can't keep doing this, man. Guys got to start playing with effort. Guys got to start doing that. And so we're talking. This is all off the record. We're talking, chatting. And then Mo Williams comes and walks by and walks to his locker. And LeBron just stares at him.
What?
Just follows him. And I was like, what was that all about? And he just stared at him, following him. And Mo could see, I can tell Mo could see LeBron looking at him, and Mo didn't really pay him no mind. He continued to get dressed. But I don't know. That's something that stood out to me as something I saw. And then, after the game, that's when we realized that Mo and Kevin Love were the two players that were calling for a timeout. And I think that they might have found out about that. Because you have to remember when Mo and Kevin Love, when they were on the bench at that time, they might have been called a timeout to try to get back in the game. Because that was maybe they were thinking that was an offensive defensive substitution pattern. Because Coach Black had Dellavedova and somebody else in at that time. And so that might, it wasn't just the assistant coaches, but the players, they might have had a motive to try to get back in that game. And that kind of spoiled the transition fast break that the Cavaliers would have had. So I don't know to answer your question, but I just kept my feet on the sideline in the background, and it stood out to me.
Chris, I know you had a recent conversation with Iman Shumpert. When he's not putting out some new music, he's obviously rehabbing. He's cheering on his teammates. He's trying to get himself back in shape where he can help this team. And obviously, we've talked about toughness being an issue with the Cavs at the beginning of the year and defensive intensity being an issue with the Cavs at the beginning of the year. He embodies those kinds of things. Is a mid-December return for Iman something that's realistic given his injury, Chris?
Yeah, it is. He's looking good. And like I said, I was told, I wrote in that story that, man, it's hyperbole, but I was told he's breaking records when it comes to how fast he's progressing. And he's trying to get out there as soon as possible, man. And he mentioned that mid-December date. If he can get at that point, he's going to give it a try. Now, at that, you have to keep in mind that the Cavaliers also have a say. And something may say, hey, I'm ready December 15th. The Cavs may say, hey, man, let's hold you back. Let's wait at least till Christmas or something. So he still has that hurdle to get by. But he's looking good, man. I mean, his left hand, he's doing a lot of drills, like I said, with left hand. This week, it might have even happened already, but this week he's starting to have, to be able to do some things with that right hand. So, but definitely his grit, his toughness is something that the team needs. It's definitely going to help. You just wonder if Iman's style of play is going to trickle down to the rest of everybody else.
Chris, going back to the effort and the toughness thing, how much of that is on the head coach? Because there have already been some changes around the NBA. Yesterday, there was the big news about Houston letting go of Kevin McHale, and I'm not saying that David Blatt's even close to walking that line, but when you talk about effort, when you talk about toughness, when you talk about intensity, how much of that comes from the head coach?
Well, some of it does because, the players, they play for the coach. They play for themselves most importantly, but the coach's voice definitely is a factor. Mm-hmm. But what I will say about this is that, this is night and day. This doesn't even compare to Houston situation because they weren't even paying attention. They weren't giving effort at all. This is a Cavs team who just fall. Anybody, superior teams or players, they fall victim to that, falling victim to playing down to a level of competition. Yep. So I don't think this is anything, on Black. This is just the reality of that they're playing in the Eastern Conference, man, and which it's a joke. It's a joke of a conference, if you ask me. And so, I think it's more so to that. And it's going to be up to not only Coach Black, but everybody else. LeBron, he's trying to get these guys up for it because it's a long season where you're playing, the Bostons of the world, the Indiana, it's bad. And so they have to fight that. And like I said, we'll see if they can do it.
All right, Chris, good stuff, man. We'll see you tonight at the game.
All right, my guy. Take care.
All right, there he is, Chris Haynes, our Cavs beat reporter. Cavs taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. Tip-off is at 8 o'clock. It's a national TV game. Of course, the Cavs trying to avenge an earlier loss. It was Milwaukee that snapped the Cavs' 8-game winning streak. 108-105 double overtime game. That was up in Milwaukee, so this one's going to be here at the Q. Cavs have played much better this year at home than they have on the road, so we'll see if they can end their current 2-game losing skid. Speaking of trying to keep a streak intact. Ohio State has a big one trying to keep intact. This weekend against Michigan State, the Buckeyes have won 30 straight Big Ten Conference games, trying to make it 31 in a row against Michigan State this weekend. And joining us to talk about that and much, much more, Doug Lesmerises, our Ohio State beat reporter. What's up, Doug?
How are you guys doing?
Doing great, man. So it's the big one. This is the one that Ohio State fans have had circled on their calendar for quite some time. What is the vibe in Columbus going into this game against Michigan State?
Thank God it's no more Rutgers. I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you, man, it's 10-0, but it's almost gotten boring because the schedule's been so bad and Ohio State is so talented and they haven't played their best, yet they've won. I mean, it's finally something where you're going to get a read on your team if you're an Ohio State fan, you know? I mean, you're just not going to get that read against Rutgers and Maryland and Illinois and Western Michigan and Hawaii. Mm-hmm. They haven't played a top 25 team. I'm not sure they played a top 40 team. So this is going to be real. The down thing is that Michigan State has some injuries. You hope Michigan State is as healthy as they can be to be able to compete, you know, the best they can in a game like this. And that's mostly about Connor Cook, the quarterback. But you finally are going to get a read on Ohio State.
And Doug, at the beginning of the season, obviously, expectations were high for the Buckeyes, reigning national champs, number one team in the country, had basically everybody coming back that we felt like were going to be of utmost importance to the team. And we haven't seen the team that so many people expected. Do you think it's still inside Ohio State to perform the way that maybe a lot of us expected at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is there. I mean, they still have the best players, and that's not just in the Big Ten. I think that's everywhere. They have the most talent, and we're going to see that in the draft next spring. And they haven't gotten worse. You know, like the offensive line didn't play that well early. The defense has been hit for big plays in spots here and there, although the defense overall has been really good. The main thing is the receivers, I think, have lost something that they haven't gotten back. They need to make some plays down the field. The passing game needs to be better. That's the only thing. The rest is there. The rest is all there. So, you know, I don't exactly buy playing down a level of competition or giving them an excuse by they've been bored or anything like that. You know, they just haven't played their best. But there's not a thing that you would point to say, oh, there's a huge hole on this team. They just need to get it all together.
Doug, looking at the college football playoff rankings, obviously so much can change in the next 2-3 weeks, but Ohio State's sitting there at number 3. Do you think that's about where they should be?
Yeah, and I think there's probably more of an argument for them being 5 than there is for them being 1. You know, if you want to sit here and tell me that Iowa, based on the schedule so far and the way Iowa has played, should be ahead of Ohio State, I think you could make that argument. I don't think they have much of an argument to be ahead of Clemson or Alabama at the moment. But if they win these next 3 games, if they beat Michigan State, Michigan, and then beat Iowa in the Big Ten Championship, I think Ohio State very well may have a case to be the number 1 seed going in. So far, yes, they shouldn't be higher than 3. But if they win these next 3 against ranked teams, they could definitely move up.
Looking at the next 2 games, the final 2 games of the regular season, of course, there's Michigan State this weekend, and then there's Michigan. Michigan's been a surprise team this year in the Big Ten. Of the 2 games for Ohio State to finish the regular season, Doug, which one do you think would be more difficult for the Buckeyes?
You know, we asked the same question to the readers in a poll that we put up yesterday afternoon. 80% of the readers are saying Michigan is a tougher game for Ohio State. One, it's on the road instead of at home. Yep. Number 2, it's the second game of the back-to-back where, you know, Ohio State this Saturday should be fresh and ready to go. Next Saturday, they may be beaten up a bit from playing a good Michigan State team, win or lose. But I think there's also part of that. The Michigan defense, I think, is probably the best unit out of the 4 sides of the ball for Michigan State and Michigan. That Michigan defense could be something that could be an issue for Ohio State. So, you know, I still think my guess is that we see the best Michigan State team of the year this Saturday. For health reasons, I think if Cook is healthy, their other positions are getting healthier, and they're just going to play good. You know they are. But I do think maybe overall Michigan is probably, on paper at least, a tougher challenge, plus you throw the rivalry stuff in.
So many people look at matchups and they go position by position or position group by position group. Where would you say Michigan State has the edge this Saturday against Ohio State?
Possibly in Michigan State's defensive line against Ohio State's offensive line. Both teams in this game have very good defensive lines. For Michigan State, Shalik Calhoun at end is a very good player.
Yep.
Malik McDowell inside is maybe as good as any defensive tackle in the Big Ten right now. They have depth. They rotate there. And Ohio State has had some issues pass blocking recently. So that line has to allow Ezekiel Elliott to do what he's going to do. But again, I think Ohio State has to throw in this game, and they have to have a little time for J.T. Barrett to do that. They'll also roll the pocket. They'll get him out of there. But if the Michigan State defensive line is constantly in J.T. Barrett's face because the offensive line can't protect, that would be an issue for the Buckeyes.
Ohio State 10-0, but the season really begins Saturday against Michigan State. Doug, thanks so much for the time, buddy. Always appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
There he is, Doug Lesmerises, our Ohio State beat reporter. It's a big one against Michigan State on Saturday, and then, of course, to finish things off in the regular season against Michigan. And this is where Ohio State has an opportunity to show the College Football Playoff Committee that they belong in the conversation with Alabama and Clemson if Clemson goes undefeated. There's a reputation that the Big Ten has, and if Ohio State wins convincingly against Michigan State, wins convincingly against Michigan, then maybe they can start to change that reputation a little bit. But as Doug said, as of now, they're sitting at number 3 because what they've accomplished so far this year, even though they're undefeated, it's not as impressive as some other teams around college football because of the schedule that they've played up until this point. Of course, that changes Saturday against Michigan State. Ohio State, Michigan State Saturday. Catch all of our coverage here on cleveland.com. The Browns, you don't have to worry about them Sunday. They don't play. They're on a bye week, but still making plenty of headlines this week in Berea. And joining us to talk about that, our Browns beat reporter, Mary Kay Cabot. What's going on, Mary Kay?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. So obviously the big news is Johnny Manziel is going to start the remainder of the season at quarterback. Do you think it's the right move by Mike Pettin and his staff?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, not from giving them the best chance to win standpoint, because I really still believe that Josh McCown gives them the best chance to win football games right now. Mm-hmm. And I know that might sound hard, for some people to believe when you look at the record, because it hasn't shown up that way. But just from the standpoint of, just the way that he has played, I still think that he is the better quarterback. But it is the right thing to do because you have to know. I mean, you've got right now the number 1 pick in the draft, and you've got to know, do you have to think about a quarterback with that pick? Or, can you ride this thing out and see if Johnny is your guy?
Mary Kay, is this decision, is it more about the way that Johnny played against Pittsburgh, or is it more about just where they are in the season and the fact that they are going into Week 11 already?
Well, I think that in what he showed in Pittsburgh is that he can actually go out there and function, which, he wasn't really, last year it was pretty evident that, you couldn't really give him 6 starts because he wasn't going to be able to function and operate the offense. But this year, I think he showed, he proved to them in that Pittsburgh game that he can get through a football game and he can manage it. And so I think, they needed to see that before they turned the team over to him. So it's not that he went out and had this, fantastic game, because I think you have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. I think there has to be, the enthusiasm needs to be tempered just a tiny bit. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers gave him a lot, and he took what they gave him, which was, a lot of space and some soft coverage in the second half. And he did make nice throws and things like that, but, they obviously weren't too overly worried that he was going to, come back and beat them. So, some of it needs to be taken with a grain of salt, but I do think that, now this gives them 6 games to try to really figure out, if he can be the guy. And, I still don't know. I mean, I still think that's a big, huge question mark.
You said you still don't know, Mary Kay, but do you feel better about his chances of being the guy after Pittsburgh, or do you still feel the same way that you did going into that Pittsburgh game?
I pretty much still feel the same way that I did, and it's, I didn't feel that way just because of the on-the-field stuff.
Sure.
I felt that way. 50% of me feeling that way is the off-the-field issues, and that's not just, that's not just what we see on Instagram and Twitter and things like that. But I mean, even if you read, Peter King's story the past couple of days about Carson Palmer and how he prepares and things like that, that's the kind of dedication that you need at this level. So, I wonder if he's willing to put all that time and effort into being a franchise quarterback, and maybe he is, maybe he's getting it, but I still have been concerned enough about his off the field issues and his commitment to being great. So I still feel the same way that I did going into that game.
Mary Kay, you had an opportunity for the first time to talk to Josh McCown since he was technically demoted to the backup quarterback. How do you think he's handling this whole thing?
Well, you know what? He's such a great guy, and he's such a true professional. And I know that, yesterday he was, probably a little bit frustrated. Everybody was trying to get out of town, and he had talked to us extensively the day that it did happen, kind of knowing that it was going to go that way, and gave us a bunch of quotes about, how he was willing to help Johnny and everything. So I think when we caught up with him yesterday, I think he was kind of like, not really up for going back over the whole thing all over again. And everybody's like, it's just not a great day to talk to players. They just want to get on the plane and get out of there. So if, some people I think may have portrayed him as being a little bit frustrated or whatever, I think it's just, what? He is human. He is human. He was playing really, really well, and he got benched for things that were completely out of his control. And that is a tough pill to swallow, because he knows how precious these opportunities are. And, he probably knows, will I get opportunities to start again? Sometimes those things don't come around again.
Mary Kay, Mike Pettine has said the bye week is going to provide the Browns an opportunity to take a step back, to evaluate things and try and change some things maybe in the final few games of the regular season. When it comes to the running game, it's been an issue all season long. It was supposed to be the strength of the offense. What should the Browns do here during the bye week to change their running game for the final few games and give Johnny Manziel a little bit of help in the backfield?
Well, you know what? That's a tough one, because if you look at what happened in the Pittsburgh game,
Yep.
I mean, you can't keep trying to run the ball if you're going to go backwards, 5 yards each time you try to run the football. So, you can't necessarily say, hey, you know what, we're just going to run the ball. If you can't do it, you're not going to be able to do it well. So I think they're going to have to take a look at the blocking schemes. They're going to have to look at some film from last year. They're going to have to figure out what they did well last year. We know that under Kyle Shanahan, they did a little bit more of the wide zone schemes and things like that. They're going to have to go back to the drawing board and see why they were able to move the ball better in the past, and see if they can't change that up a little bit, and then perhaps try to make a little bit more of a commitment to the run to see if you can get it rolling a little bit. And, maybe give the ball to Duke a little bit more. I think they'll try. But I just don't know if it's too late in the season to try to be very effective from that standpoint.
Mary Kay, on the other side of the ball, it seems like the defensive players have been more vocal, and it seemed like some of the comments were directed at the coaching staff. Did you take those comments the same way from Tramon Williams, Paul Kruger, following the loss against the Steelers? And if you did take them that way, what does that mean when it comes to their level of respect, their level of buying in to Jim O'Neill and Mike Pettine and the defense?
Well, these are a couple of guys that have played on Super Bowl teams, so I think that their words do carry some weight. And I do think that they're trying to say, hey, you know what, we are, we are perhaps confused by certain schemes, or not, things aren't streamlined the way that we need them to be. I think the coaches need to hear what they're saying and take into account what they're saying. And maybe they even pull those guys into a room and say, let's go over this. Let's talk about this. And I'm sure the door is always open, and they do that anyways. But if those guys are willing to say those things to us, then hopefully they're having those conversations, with the coaches and stuff like that. So, and then in addition to that, I do think that Mike Pettine needs to get more involved in the defense. I mean, that was his calling card. That was the reason why he was hired in the first place. That was a major reason that he was hired, that he was going to have this hallmark signature type of defense. And it's obviously not that for a lot of reasons. A lot of those reasons have to do with the fact that they don't have the same kind of players that they had in Baltimore and New York and Buffalo when they were, in the top 5 and whatnot. But I do think that he needs to get back to that and kind of just let Flip and Kevin let them handle a little bit more of the offense for a while.
Mary Kay, good stuff. Enjoy a Browns free Sunday.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
There she is, Mary Kay Cabot. Continue to check out all of our Browns content, cleveland.com/Browns. Even on a bye week, there's still plenty to talk about when it comes to the Browns, especially when they name Johnny Manziel the starting quarterback for the rest of the year. So thanks to Mary Kay Cabot, Doug Lesmerises, as we previewed Ohio State and Michigan State, the big one this weekend in Columbus. And then, of course, thanks to Chris Haynes, our Cavs beat reporter. Cavs taking on the Milwaukee Bucks, trying to snap that 2-game losing skid tonight at home as they begin a 3-game homestand coming up here. All right, that's all the time we have today on Sports Insider. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We'll talk to you next Thursday, each and every Thursday at noon here on cleveland.com.